The very existence of Gaza in question as Israel moves to force Palestinians out. Mention of relocating Gazans to famine-ridden South Sudan amid a plan to occupy Gaza City is causing fury among Israeli allies and enemies alike. While the UN warns of calamity, it's still unclear if Israel will ever draw a line in its assault on the Palestinian people. I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Gaza. In Israel's unrelenting assault on Gaza, rules do not apply. Journalists are killed with no accountability. Plans to mobilize illegal settlers and land grabs progress freely, as do proposals to remove Gazans for relocation to third countries. And now, Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has approved plans to split East Jerusalem from the occupied West Bank, effectively ending any chance of building a Palestinian state. So with no consequences so far for even the most brazen illegal actions, how much longer can Gazans hold out? Here's a look.
Bombs, explosions, and over 120 more people dead as Israel's military targets Gaza City on Wednesday. People with barely any time to leave, fleeing with what little they had.
I didn't bring a mattress or anything, and we just escaped death. And now we're running away, and we don't know where to go.
And in Israeli politics, Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, announced he will approve a plan to build thousands of housing units in an illegal Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank, openly admitting he wants to bury the idea of a Palestinian state. The move would split East Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank. Back in Gaza, signs of malnutrition are increasing. Gaza's Ministry of Health reported that 5 people died in 24 hours alone due to malnutrition and starvation. Israel apparently using any excuse to turn away desperately needed food.
I am carrying baby milk. This is the second time I have gone in and came back. They tell you, for example, that the pallet doesn't have a sticker, the pallet is tilted, or the pallet is open from the top. So this is not a reason at all for us to return it.
Israeli authorities deny they're preventing aid from being delivered and deny shooting people approaching trucks to get food, water and medicine, insisting it only targets Hamas operatives. All the while, fear inside the enclave ratchets up. Israel is planning for its military to march into Gaza fully.
Last Thursday, Israel's Security Cabinet, instructed the IDF to dismantle the 2 remaining Hamas strongholds in Gaza City and the central camps. Contrary to false claims, this is the best way to end the war and the best way to end it speedily.
Palestinians believe this may constitute an attempt at outright annexation and worry about ethnic cleansing and forced expulsion after Netanyahu said that Gazans should leave combat zones.
Give them the opportunity to leave. First of all, to leave combat zones and generally leave the Gaza Strip if they want. We will allow this, first of all within Gaza during the fighting, and we will certainly allow them to leave Gaza as well.
But many refuse, under the belief they will not be let back in by Israel if they do. Reports are also circulating that Israel may be in talks with South Sudan in a plan to resettle Palestinians to the war-torn African nation. South Sudan's foreign ministry forced to deny those reports in an official statement. Hamas's 2023 attack killed around 1,200 people in Israel. 251 were seized and taken as hostages. 2 years later, Israel has killed nearly 62,000 Palestinians, 235 people and 106 children victims of starvation. And there is no end in sight to the war.
So how far can Israel really go in its Gaza policy. Well, joining me now to debate that and more are from Washington, former U.S. State Department official and senior advisor to democracy for the Arab world now, Charles Blaha. From London, British Palestinian political analyst Yousef Alhelou. And from Tel Aviv, political analyst and contributor to Haaretz, Akiva Eldar. Thanks all so much for being with me. Charles, I'll begin with you. I said earlier in the program that in this war, rules really don't apply. Israel has, not just in Gaza, but for decades now, gotten away with violating international law and every UN resolution. But now at least it seems some of its own allies are fed up. So will at least the most extreme actions it's planning be stopped?
Well, first of all, you're correct that up to now, at least the U.S. has failed in the case of Israel to follow its own laws when it comes to assistance. Whether Israel's actions will now provoke some sort of more robust U.S. response depends on President Trump. And what we've seen from President Trump is, if you take Ukraine and Putin as an example, if he feels that he is being personally ignored, that may spark something. President Trump has recently talked about his concerns about hunger in Gaza, and if that continues, that may provoke a response from President Trump that would lead to more robust U.S. pressure on Israel.
If that continues, but I imagine you agree it's somewhat unpredictable?
Very.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask Akiva. I mean, one of the most extreme steps Israel has said it will take is to occupy fully Gaza City. Do you think Israel will occupy Gaza City? Because if they do, they will then be responsible for rebuilding all the schools, all the hospitals, all the services, which Israel will not want to do. But having said that, does it even matter? Because Israel doesn't follow international law anyway.
Well, Israel doesn't respect also the Israeli law, let alone the international law. Actually, they are playing it stereo, because you know that this government is fully fledged back to the judicial reform, and law is alien to them. It is like you have a wild child in the class or a bunch of loose cannons in the government. It seems that they don't care. They simply don't care. I agree that the only responsible adult that they respect is President Trump. And Netanyahu is playing a completely different game. He's playing the domestic politics, his own future. In November, he will have to testify 3 or 4 days a day. We forgot about it, that he is still having to answer very serious questions on corruption. So his interest is actually to keep the status quo, to throw all kinds of rumors, then to deny it. For instance, he said that after the war is finished, and this is one of his 5 conditions, after the war is over, he wants to keep full security responsibility on the Gaza Strip, but at the same time, he would not turn over the civil administration to the Palestinian Authority, and of course, not Hamas. So who else? I don't see many countries lining up to open schools and clinics in the West, in Gaza. Actually, he's not doing it in the West Bank. Why in Area C, which is under full Israeli control? So why should he do it in Gaza?
Yeah, okay. I mean, Yousef, Akiva was mentioning Netanyahu wanting to maintain the status quo in Israel. But what about the status quo, if I can even call it that, in Gaza? If we talk about returning to the pre-October 7th status quo of Israeli control more de facto control over the Gaza Strip, keeping it an open-air prison, as the United Nations did call it. Are we looking at a return to that status quo, only massively downgraded?
Israel feels the pressure from its allies, but because it enjoys impunity, we don't see practical steps on the ground by the US administration, by Trump himself, to put an end to the suffering of Palestinians, to put an end to the genocide and starvation. What other crimes, war crimes, Trump wants to see in order to say to Netanyahu, stop, that's it? In my opinion, I don't think Israel will be is interested to take responsibility to look after the welfare and needs of Gaza's 2.5 million people, because it will cost it a lot of money. In addition to that, that will be a burden on Israel's shoulder. To go back to the normality before October the 7th, Israel has to rebuild Gaza. Is Israel willing to fund and finance the reconstruction of Gaza, or is it going to be rebuilt through Arab money? So Israel wants Gaza to be unlivable, uninhabitable. It wants the Arab countries to take care of the ruling of Gaza. It's ironic also Netanyahu doesn't want the Palestinian Authority, the moderate Mahmoud Abbas party, Fatah movement, to rule the Gaza Strip. There's no end game here. And I think Netanyahu is panicking because he is actually losing support from his allies. But I don't see there is practical, concrete pressure on him to stop what he's doing against the Palestinians of Gaza, let alone targeting of Palestinian journalists, the starvation, the killing of civilians, and the dehumanization of Palestinians, starving Palestinians who are being shot dead like sitting ducks at the food distribution points.
Yousef, very quickly, I want this perspective from a Palestinian. If, I know this is very hypothetical, but if the international community were to step up full support, Trump included, for Palestinians, how would you want to see Gaza either rebuild at this point? What would happen with the West Bank? What would you ideally want to see happen to Palestinians now?
To immediately end Israel's genocide, allow aid in, and also start the reconstruction of Gaza. But the most, important thing right now is to alleviate the suffering of starving Palestinians. Dropping aid from the air is not helping. The best solution is to allow hundreds and thousands of stranded aid trucks in the Egyptian side and the Israeli side to feed starving Palestinians. I want to see an end to Israel's hostilities and also ultimately during the occupation. Israel did not leave Gaza in 2005. It redeployed its forces.
Right. So in the longer term, do you want to see immediate steps taken for the aftermath in order to build the Palestinian state that more and more Western countries are now giving recognition to?
Well, as a official, he said that by September, if the UK and France they are going to recognize Palestine, there is nothing going to be there to recognize. So two-state solution is already dead, and some Palestinians advocate for one-state solution because the ethnic cleansing that took place in Gaza means that Palestinians will not have their houses rebuilt unless Israel really allows the international community to rebuild Gaza.
Okay. Charles, let me come back to you, and I want to take a step back to what is happening right now as far as Israeli planning is concerned. And there is this issue now of forced displacement. We know Israel has proven it can kind of do the unthinkable and get away with it, especially when we look at the blocking of very basic aid, not least food. But can Israel actually repatriate the population, especially to third countries, the way it's been suggested? I mean, famine-ridden South Sudan, that has to be just a scare tactic, right?
Well, it certainly faces a lot of practical obstacles. The specter of relocating hundreds of thousands of people to a place far, far away just doesn't really seem very realistic. I would point out that the South Sudanese foreign minister has denied that such talks are taking place. But I would emphasize the point that you made at the beginning. There is certainly an intent on the part of many in the Israeli government and a willingness of many people in the Israeli public to relocate the Gaza population or large portions of it, perhaps just to crowd them all into the south, perhaps to send them to Jordan, perhaps to pressure Egypt, and that poses the specter of ethnic cleansing and something that would be illegal. In terms of rebuilding, before we even get to that point, we need to remember that Hamas gets a vote. Hamas, in its military capability, has been very, very significantly reduced from where it was on October 7th. But it is not yet militarily defeated. It can still mount attacks. And, what does it even mean for Israel to retake Gaza City? How long? How are they going to do it? In the past, since October 7th, Hamas has shown an ability to reconstitute itself in areas that Israel has supposedly taken. So before any talk of rebuilding can happen, there has to be security. And as Akiva pointed out, Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority as governing Gaza. But the first step has to be security.
Right. But still, very quickly, Charles, I mean, beyond that security, when we're talking about Israel's goals to displace the population entirely, fine, South Sudan might not be realistic. The foreign minister says he doesn't even know about it, but there's always been talk from Israel about fellow Arab states somehow either taking them on voluntarily as displaced people or being forced to. Is that completely unrealistic, or could Israel feasibly somehow make even that happen?
Well, I think there's certainly the intent, and depending upon what the plan is, Israel might be able to accomplish large portions of it. In terms of the U.S. attitude, President Trump has made statements suggesting he might support doing that, or in whole and in part. And remember, Ambassador Huckabee, because of his religious beliefs, believes that the entire territory of what he calls Judea and Samaria, which would include Gaza, belongs to Israel.
Right. Let me come back to Akiva, because we also have on the table, as we found out today, Minister Smotrich's plan to build more illegal settlements that would effectively separate East Jerusalem from the West Bank, shuttering any prospect of ever being able to build a Palestinian state. And the U.S. refused to agree to that very plan even a few decades ago. Even the U.S. disagreed with it. Yet here we are again. Where do you see Smotrich's plan going, not just among the Israeli government, but among the Israeli population?
Actually, this was a red line for all American administrations since we signed the Oslo Agreement, because, as you said, this is a kind of an oxymoron of a two-state solution. This is the absolute determination of Smotrich and his colleagues. This is their answer to the declaration of those countries in Europe and elsewhere to recognize the Palestinian state. It's like sticking a finger into their eyes. But I want to go back to domestic politics. Actually, Smotrich doesn't reach the threshold when we look at the polls, and he needs to take a stronger, more radical position than Netanyahu and the Likud. So he's making those statements. I think that it's very clear to Netanyahu that this is a kind of, I would say, making a complete crisis between Israel and the international community. This is suicidal diplomatically. And Smotrich is trying to reach out to Netanyahu's constituency and show them that he is more determined to occupy not only Gaza, but the entire West Bank. It started actually with the former prime minister, with Naftali Bennett, who is now the hope of the Israeli center-left. He was determined to annex Area C, which is about 60% of the West Bank, to annex it to Israel. They asked President Trump to confirm it. And actually, in Trump's plan from 2020, parts of the West Bank would have been annexed to Israel.
Yeah. You know what, Akiva, difficult question, but help us understand, when you talk about Netanyahu's constituency and the far right's constituency, you know, some have talked about the demographics in Israel, whereby those on the extremes, the settlers in particular, are growing in numbers much faster than moderate Israelis. And Netanyahu has seen the future in that either you cater to those more extreme positions or you're going to lose a voter base. I mean, I saw one study say I think the birth rate is minimum 2 to 1 between settlers and moderate Israelis. So is this playing a factor here?
Actually, you need to add to this equation the ultra-Orthodox, who become a kind of a mixture of fascist and ultra-Orthodox. And there is right now a major crisis between Netanyahu and his constituency regarding drafting the yeshiva students. We don't know what will happen in the next elections, because this may cause early elections, force on Netanyahu to go to elections. But yes, demography is working against the Israeli moderate camp, the peace camp. And I believe that if in the next election, the Likud and their allies from like Smotrich and the Orthodox will stay in power, Israeli democracy, not only the two-state solution, the Israeli liberal democracy is over.
Yeah. Okay. Yousef, we only have 3 minutes left, and I want to get both of your final thoughts in. So at this point, tell me where you see now the future of this war and the future of the Palestinian people.
Well, the Palestinian people will not vanish. Israel is so angry from the Palestinians' steadfastness because they refuse to raise the white flag. Now, everybody knows, including Israeli citizens, that their state is the most hated state on earth because of its bad record of violations of human rights. It has caused to itself irreparable damage that it will not be able to whitewash its tarnished image, even if it has all the propaganda machines in the world. Israel's justification from waging this genocide is to rescue the hostages. It doesn't care about the hostages. Its ultimate goal is to destroy Gaza and send millions of Palestinians to the diaspora that they will not accept to go to South Sudan or Arab countries anyway. Now, Israel has sabotaged the international law, and if the international community does not pressure Israel to end its occupation and abide by international law, then this means that Palestinians, they don't believe in any slogans of civilization, human rights. So I see the future lies within the Israeli society. If they want to really be part of the region, they have to accept Palestinians, recognize their existence, and allow them to have their own independent state, which is enshrined in international law. Palestinians are struggling for self-determination, and they will not forget or forgive those who took part in this complicity, who allowed this genocide to go on for over 2 years, for almost 2 years.
Yeah. Charles, I can give you a final 90 seconds.
Well, I think one of the things that we've heard, and from all three of the panelists, is that U.S. pressure to come to a ceasefire, to open Gaza to humanitarian aid and other things is key. And as you pointed out right at the top, this depends upon President Trump And unfortunately, that is very, very unpredictable at this point.
Unpredictable, but do you think Trump would at least try to stop Israel from taking over Gaza City?
That appears unlikely. He has appeared at this point unwilling to talk about specific Israeli military operations. The one thing to keep in mind, and I know this sounds far-fetched, is that President Trump is very focused on trying to win a Nobel Peace Prize. So at some point down the road, that could push him to try to take a more robust role in pressuring Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Okay, Charles, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank sincerely all three of my panelists so much for being with me, and our viewers, of course, for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.